All right, Marvin, thank you so much for joining me on the Do Big Things podcast. I know you're a friend of Brian Pacenti's, and he said you'd be a great guest. He said you've done some big things, so I can't wait to hear all about them, man. How long have you lived in Leadville?
I'm a lifer. I was born and raised. There
No
was a
kidding.
stint of 4 years where I went off to college on a wrestling scholarship, and
Ah,
but as soon as I graduated, came back and got a teaching job right away. So just
what?
been up here in Leadville all my life.
Wow, awesome. What do you teach?
I'm not currently a teacher now, but I did go to school for physical education. So I was a
Okay,
PE and health teacher
cool.
for quite a few years, but had to throw in the towel and try something different.
Huh? Why? What happened?
Just teaching's tough.
Yeah,
That's about all I can say. I mean, it was definitely a dream job for many years. And then I don't know. It's kind of tough.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, especially living in Leadville.
Yeah.
Schools are small. Well, dude, I'm jealous. Leadville is one of my favorite towns. So years and years ago, um, I lived in Wisconsin, and I eventually wanted to I was at this, I don't know if it was like a midlife crisis. It was at this breaking point in my life, and I knew I wanted to go out and do something. And I was tossing around ideas like go hike the Appalachian Trail, the PCT, and I decided on coming out to Colorado and hiking all the 14ers. And, as a Wisconsin guy, that's a pretty big endeavor. And at the time I wasn't really even a runner. Wasn't really even a hiker either, but I decided I was going to do this thing and didn't know anything about Leadville. So as I'm out here hiking all the different peaks, I sort of I felt like I discovered Leadville. I found this little town. I'm like, man, this place is just so cool. And I just loved everything about it. And I just kept coming back to it while I was out here for that 2 months. I'd go hike a couple peaks and I'd come back to Leadville and go hike a couple more and come back to Leadville. And it was just like my favorite place. And of course, now I've done the Leadville 100 a couple times, and I took a look at your ultra sign up. It looks like you've done it quite a few times.
Yep. I definitely have quite a few belt buckles
Nice.
from that race.
Yeah. And it looks like you've done the marathon. You've done all the races out there too.
Yeah. It was, I started off doing the bike race.
Okay.
Um, and that was about 11 years ago
Mm.
or 12 years ago. And, anyways, it started off as the bike race. And then from there, wanted to sign up for the bike race again. I asked a friend if he was going to sign up so we could go ahead and train together. And he said that he was going to do all of them. So the whole Leadman series.
Yeah.
And so it was at that point where it was kind of opened to my eyes and he said a few choice words to me. And so I decided to sign up with him. And that first year that I did the Leadman was the first year I ever did any running racing.
Really?
Entered a 5K, then I had to do the marathon,
Mhm.
and then went for basically the granddaddy of them all, the 100. And
Wow.
I finished it. It was rough, but
Yeah.
I finished it.
Wow. So you primarily come from like a mountain biking background?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say primarily, but I started mountain biking 2 years before I started running. It was, yeah, so basically that's kind of where it started. I haven't been into the endurance world, I mean, long relative to some other people. Just about 13 years is what I've been doing it now.
That's a while.
And yeah, in 13 years, I've completed the Leadman series 9 times.
Okay. Wow.
I've been the Leadman champion 2 times out of
Whoa.
that.
Wait, you did the Leadman 9 times?
Yeah.
No
Every
kidding.
every time I've completed the Trail 100 run, I did it in addition to the whole Leadman series.
Whoa, dude, that's crazy. And you've been the champion a couple times.
Yes, sir.
No kidding. So, okay, so what does that involve? Being the champion of the Leadman, you're getting all these races done faster than anyone else? I mean, you're not the winner of the Leadville 100, I don't
No,
think, are you? Or how does it
no.
work?
Yeah, it's accumulated time of all the races
Okay.
and whoever has the fastest time. So the Leadville Trail Marathon, and then you get to choose as far as the 50s go, whether it's the 50 bike or the 50 run. And they kind of have it weighted based off of the cutoff times. So I think the cutoff time for the bike is 9 hours, I believe, and the cutoff time for the run, I think maybe it's 12 hours. Actually, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, they kind of do some sort of math there and take the lowest score of the two. So anyways, getting back to the start. So I do the marathon, and then the Leadville Trail, and then the Silver Rush 50. I do the bike one day, and then the next day I do the run. So back-to-back 50s. And then the Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike, and then the 10K, and then the 100 run.
Wow. That's
so
incredible.
all in one summer.
Yeah.
And then whoever has the fastest time out of all those is the one that, gets crowned the champion.
Wow. Unreal, man. The Leadman is something that's always intrigued me. I've always, it's kind of on the list. It's something that I've always wanted to do. But 9 times, man, that is legit right there. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like all encompassing for your whole summer, I would imagine. That just pretty much takes up everything.
Yeah, it pretty much takes up everything. And so I have quite a few races that I try to get in beforehand, both mountain biking and running.
Okay.
And it's all more of training for the Leadman series. And then I usually try to get in some races after it's all done and thinking that I'm going to be in the best shape, but it usually doesn't turn out that way. Pretty toasted by the end of the summer.
Oh, dude, I can only imagine. So you grew up in Leadville, and you said you had a wrestling background too. So
Correct.
Is that kind of how athletics all started for you, or how did it all start?
Yeah, I would say that I was introduced to, as far as sports goes, through wrestling. I was in a youth program up here. It's called the 2 Mile High Wrestling Club. And I think I started that when I was in first grade.
Wow.
And so from first grade all the way till junior high, I was in that Pee-wee wrestling. And then once junior high started, I was, I was the best in the state in wrestling.
Whoa.
In junior high. And then in high school, I went on to do some junior national tournaments. And so I traveled a lot in wrestling. And then in high school, I was also state champion for wrestling, and it just took me all the way, and it's kind of what paid for my education.
Wow.
But to that point, I also did some football, and then my last years in high school, I did run some track. I was on some sprinting relays.
Okay.
So, but as far as endurance running or any endurance sport, I didn't start it till, about 13 years ago, I guess.
Yeah. How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
42.
Okay. So 13 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, late 20s, early 30s. That's pretty much about the same as me.
Yeah. I guess it's been a while, but in relative to other people, I feel like I started late, but
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, sort of late in life, but I feel like you have to have almost like an emotional maturity before you're really ready to run 100 miles. I mean, like right out of high school, there's no chance I could have run 100 miles. So
yeah, I surely couldn't have.
Yeah, you got to have some life experience and a little emotional maturity before you're able to tackle something like that. Did you wrestle collegiately as well?
Yeah, I wrestled collegiately for 3 of the 4 years in college. They ended up cutting the program my senior year when I was in college, and our team was Colorado State University Pueblo. Anyways, we were ranked 3rd in the nation, and they cut the program for funding issues. It was kind of a stab in the heart.
That's a
lot of people. Yeah, a lot of the teammates went off and did wrestled elsewhere after that, but I just stayed and got my degree, and they still kept the scholarship. So I don't know.
Wow.
It was kind of interesting and weird how it all turned out, that they just cut the program, and literally we were ranked 3rd in the nation that year.
Wow. That sucks.
Yeah. But I was an All-American wrestler in college.
Wow.
So
I'm really interested in wrestling being your background and that being a foundation for your athletics. I wish I would have wrestled in high school. I never did. But then later in life, like mid-20s, I'd always done a little bit of martial arts up to my mid-20s, and mid-20s or so is kind of when I discovered jiu-jitsu. So I started doing some jiu-jitsu classes, and I did it for quite a few years. And the whole time I was just like, God, I wish I would have wrestled. Like that would have been so helpful. Have you ever done anything like that? Like jujitsu, martial arts, anything else like in the combat sports?
No, well, actually, I did. Um, in high school, I took some Taekwondo classes. I don't remember for how long, maybe it was just a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
It was just something to do, and I wanted to try something different as well,
Yeah.
but never went beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wrestling just builds such a foundation, especially if you're that elite, man. You must have been training hard. I'm sure you learned how to work out in a big bad way. You're cutting weight. You're learning a lot about your body. So, is that what you would attribute a lot of your athletics to? Is back in the wrestling days?
I would say so. And I think it's more towards just the mindset, whether
Totally.
it's the mindset of working hard when you're out there training, the mindset of not giving up, or, just being in that pain cave and knowing that it's all going to be okay. It's just temporary. And I've been in that pain cave multiple times. And yeah, so I think it's more of a mindset and where the growth happened most
Mm-hmm.
for through wrestling.
Yeah. What weight did you
Yeah.
wrestle at?
Oh, when I was in college, it was 134, and in
Okay.
high school, 134. My later years, and so I would say, looking at myself, I definitely don't have what I would consider an endurance body or a runner's body. I mean, I'd say I'm built to wrestle. That's just my body type.
Like short and stocky.
Short and stocky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. What do you walk around at normally for weight?
About 150 is where I'm at right now.
Okay. So would you,
Sometimes later in the summer, I'd go make it down to like 145 or so, but I'm 5'3", 150.
okay. So were you generally cutting like 20 pounds?
Well, back then I was just a littler guy, I would say, but yeah, I was definitely cutting hard weight when I was in college.
Wow. Just sitting in a sauna, spitting in a cup all day, or what it looked like for you?
We used to have the first 2 years, I would say you could almost do whatever you wanted to cut weight. I mean, we had an exercise bike in the sauna, and we'd get on that thing and just ride it like no other.
Yeah.
But then in the later years, they definitely put in some pretty strict regulations. So if you were going to be doing any of that, it was behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just the mindset of putting your body through something like that and coming out the other side stronger.
What was that mindset like? I mean, did you have a good teacher telling you like what to do and how to find this mindset, or is it just something you kind of honed on your own over the years?
I would say it's probably something more than I just honed on my
Okay.
own. And
Okay.
it's just because I wanted it. And I
Mm.
think anything that you want, you're just going to put your mind to it and finish it. And I mean, and it's just, what can Marvin do today?
Mm.
And when I'm out there racing, my fastest times that I've had for the Leadville Trail 100 was 1944. I
Wow.
took 8th that year, and I just remember throughout that whole time, I just kept telling myself, "What can Marvin do today?" And so I was just really pushing myself because I was more curious of, like, what can I do today? And it felt like it was just the perfect day for me. I mean, I've had some really tough days out there, and I've still finished well, but that one year when it was 2015, it was just, everything seemed easy out there. And I don't know if it was in the right mindset, if it was the training that I did that year, but there was definitely something magical about that year.
Yeah, no doubt. What would Marvin do today? Is that like a mantra of yours?
Yeah. What can I do today?
What can I do today? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that being powerful, man. Going back to wrestling quick, before we jump into the endurance sports, like who were some of your people that you looked up to in the wrestling world? Like, were you into like Dan Gable and all these guys, or?
Yeah. I was definitely into them, but I have to say, compared to, I guess, some of my other teammates in college, especially, who had a lot of their heroes, I just didn't really pay attention to some of those guys.
Okay,
I wasn't really into what anybody else was truly doing.
cool.
And it was always fun to watch, and going to the NCAA championships and watching some of those guys. It was impressive to see, but I just wasn't really into following a lot of the Olympic wrestlers or
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that, to be honest.
So you
It
didn't
was
really have any heroes or anybody you were looking up to?
no, not necessarily. I would really say if I looked up to anybody, it was my coach. His name was Jim McCall up here in Leadville. Just I spent so many years with him, and I think he taught me so many different ways out through wrestling, and so many different things of I don't know if it's where my mindset came from, if it was my father who kind of got me into it and was always out there pushing me. Um, but I do have to say that I'd attribute a lot of the success I had back then and even now, I guess, with my father and with my coach, Jim McCall.
Hmm.
So,
What was your dad's what was your dad like? What was his influence like? It sounds like it was pretty strong.
yeah, the big thing about what he would do is no matter what, he made it to every single wrestling tournament, wrestling match. Um, I just remember him traveling everywhere
Hmm.
uh, to go watch and support me. And even now to this day, here I'm 42 years old, and I would say that he goes to 95% of my races.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So big
And
supporter.
so, yeah, he loves being out there and he loves supporting um, his kids and whatever we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Was he a wrestler?
Yes, my phone is a
That's right.
donkey ringtone. But yes, he was a wrestler. He wrestled when he was in high school as well, and he took third in state.
Ah,
Um, and so I think that probably had a lot to do with me pushing myself. And if my dad can do it, I surely can do it.
yeah.
And so I think that was a big push. And in addition to that, my brother, he's a year older than me. He also wrestled in high school, and even to this day, we both do our endurance sports, and we're out there, training with each other a lot of times, and just kind of pushing each other. That kind of sibling rivalry.
Yeah. That's
So
cool. Who's faster?
I used to be considerably faster uh, for many years. But now it seems like I don't want to say the tide's turned, but he's getting faster on the bike than I am. But
Hmm.
when it comes to running, I usually used to beat him until I guess more recently than he's starting to come away with it. But last year, for an example, in the Leadman, I ended up beating him in the whole Leadman series. So last year I was faster in that, but he's definitely getting faster on the bike than I am.
Okay.
Um, So yeah, but I guess I would say we alternate is what it kind of comes
Back
down
and
to.
forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you just have one brother?
Yeah, I have one brother and one sister.
Okay. So if you guys were both wrestling growing up, I'm picturing like rambunctious boys, like beating each other up, wrestling at home, all that. Was it like that in your household or was it more structured?
I would say there's a lot of structure to it because I mean we were both rambunctious. We did some pretty silly things out there,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't say that we were always out there just I don't know wrestling or horse playing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. That's cool, man. So your dad must be proud if he followed you all the way through wrestling and into your endurance career. That's pretty cool, man. Um, so then you wrestled collegiately. What happened when you get out of college? Is that when you found endurance sports right away, or what did that look like? Oops, can you hear
yeah,
me?
as soon as I got out of college, when I was coaching into any endurance sports at all, it was just can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Am I frozen? Let's see.
Oh, okay. So,
Am I
yeah,
there?
you did freeze, but that's okay.
Okay.
So as soon as I graduated from college, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Now
me?
can you hear me?
I can. Sorry, folks.
Can you hear me now?
Am I still frozen?
No, you're not frozen anymore.
Okay, go for it, man. Whenever you're ready.
Now you're frozen.
Oh, shoot. Trying to switch internets here, but it's not working for me.
Dang it. Is this?
It's that Leadville Wi-Fi. Okay, sorry folks, I'm switching internets. Okay, I just switched internets. I hope that works.
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me
Okay,
now?
I can. Yeah, let's go.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. So after I graduated college, when I came back up to Leadville, I was teaching and coaching, and wasn't into any endurance sports. Didn't do really anything outside of coach wrestling and teach.
Okay.
It was quite a few years after that when it was just kind of in a down time in my life, I would say. And I was just driving through town, and I happened to come across the finish line of the Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike race.
Mm.
And although I knew that race was been going on for many years, it was the first time that I stopped and actually watched it.
Mm.
So I went to the finish line and was just watching some people come across. And I remember the exact time. It was 8 hours and 58 minutes on that clock. And I saw an old high school friend come across that finish line. And I don't know, I think it was kind of that moment when I decided, if he can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a mountain bike until that point, and it was the next day when I started doing some research and figuring out what I needed to do, and went to the local bike shop, told them I had $2,000 and I wanted a bike that I could do the Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike on. And so that year I got my first bike, signed up for the race, and just trained and trained. And I remember my goal was to beat that guy, because in high school I felt like I was a better athlete than him. And I did everything I could. I remember pushing across that finish line, and I came across 8:58.
Mm.
Oh no, wait, I take that back. I came across 8:57. He came across 8:58. So I beat him by 1 minute.
Wow.
And so that's kind of where it started. And then from that point on, I started looking at other races. That was my first ever race, whether it be, outside of, I guess, high school. And so just jumped right into it. And then the next year I did that race again. And then I ended up working for the Leadville Race Series.
Okay.
And that was the first year that I did the whole Leadman series, because I signed up for the whole Leadman series, and then I started working for them just part-time, thinking that it'd be a summer job.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned out to be a full-time job. But that's the first year when I completed the whole Leadman series and the Leadville Trail 100 run. And then I took 1 year off basically from endurance sports because I was working for the Leadville Race Series. And that 1 year went from kind of the whole reason why I started teaching was to have summers off. Now all of a sudden I'm working for the Leadville Race Series, and summers aren't off. In fact, they're the busiest time of year. And I just, from there, it just went against everything that I, thought I wanted, because I love the summers up here. And so I threw in the towel and told him that, it just really wasn't for me, as far as for working for them. And so I went back into education, and that's when I started just really getting into the true endurance racing. And that's when it really opened the doors for the rest of my Leadman series and the Leadville Trail 100 run. I've done Run Rabbit Run, and just a lot of different 50s, all over the place. So
yeah. So what was it like after you finished that first Leadman? You finished your first 100-mile race and your first Leadman pretty much at the same time. Did that really open up a lot of doors for you? Like, I just read a quote earlier today, and it's something like, once you run a marathon, you have more possibilities, but once you run an ultra marathon, the possibilities become endless. Did things really open up for you? Like in your mind, did you think, man, I can do whatever I want to do? Or what was going through your head at that point?
I would say at that point, I remember like that race was just so incredibly tough for me that first year. I want to say that I trained, but I truly didn't train very much at all. In fact, part of it is probably because I didn't know how to train for it.
Okay.
But like crossing that finish line, it was a hobble. Like it was definitely very, very painful.
Mm.
Yeah, but when I crossed that finish line, I think the first thing that went through my mind was never, ever going to do that shit again. Just because like it was tough. It was, I mean, I don't think I've ever been in that much pain for so long. And I felt like, I mean, I definitely got injured kind of early, top of my foot, some of those tendons just kind of flared up. And so it went from, I'm going to run this to, I'm going to jog this to, oh my God, I just got to keep moving forward and do what I can to cross that finish line.
Yep.
But even the next day, or I guess it was that morning at the award ceremony, it was still, I almost don't want to say that I thought I was going to die, but like just my back was hurting. I was starting to get all these cold sweats. I mean, I just did not seem worth it to me. And I remember even my kids looked at me like as if I was crazy, and I had to get their skateboard. I would kind of roll off the couch onto their skateboard, get myself to the bathroom, and I mean, I needed help using the restroom.
Right.
I was in some rough shape. I was using crutches for 2 weeks.
Whoa.
Like, I was in rough shape, and I vowed at that time, yep, just one and done. But once I was able to walk again, I do have to say that's where it came in of, it wasn't that bad. And I accomplished that, the time was 29 hours and 41 minutes. And I was like, man, if I only really put my mind to it and worked a little bit harder, did a few different things, I kind of wonder what I could do.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to my wife, Lisa, I told her, I think I'm going to do it again. And she just looked at me like I was crazy. And you can see that worry look in her face because she saw me at the finish line. Yeah. She saw me hobbling around for 2 weeks afterwards. And so I guess to answer your question, yes. You cross that finish line, it does. It changes you.
Yeah.
And even to this day where, I mean, I'm not saying that the Leadville Trail 100 is easy, because it is not easy by any means. But I truly feel that just with the training I have, come race day, I know I'm going to finish. Come race day, I know I'm going to get that big buckle. And it kind of took away from, I guess, the challenge. Because although it's very challenging out there, and my biggest thing is to get the fastest time I possibly can, but I feel like the challenge of accomplishing it, completing it, it's so very doable for me now. And I think it's just because I've done it 9 times and it just feels that way. Although I know every time I step up to the starting line, anything could happen, and I may not cross that line. That's when I started trying to do some other bigger races where I've completed and did like the Tahoe 200 for an example. And and that was a tougher one than I expected. And just this past summer, I went and I signed up for the Moab 240, which ended up being an epic fail. But
I mean, it comes with the territory, man.
Yeah.
What happened at the Moab 240?
I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I mean, obviously COVID through the summer kind of threw a lot of wrenches.
But you did Nolan's this year though too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I really want to hear about that. I'm a big fan of Nolan's, but I'm guessing that you did Nolan's and then the Moab 240 was after that.
Yeah.
So did that have anything to do with it?
I think that had a lot to do with it. In fact, it was my brother who, at the beginning of the summer, once we saw that a lot of these races were getting canceled, that he was like, man, we should do Nolan's. I was like, all right, I've always wanted to do it, and I guess this is the year. And so he was out there hiking and training like significantly every day. He was climbing 14ers, and I felt like I was kind of behind the curve to go out there and attempt this with him. But I kind of by the end of the summer we set a date and we're like, okay, we'll get it done. And we had it, I think it was the beginning of August is when we first attempted it. But anyway, so throughout the summer, we went out there and we didn't really scout it too much as far as the course. I just downloaded somebody else's course from Strava, put it on my phone, and on a free app. And anyways, we attempted it, and we went out there, and it was just so much more difficult than I think both of us anticipated.
Oh, I'm so glad when people say that, because I've been out there, dude, and I have yet to complete it. I've made a few attempts, and yeah, it's the hardest thing I've attempted. So I'm
Yeah, it was.
glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, the first time, because I attempted it once and then I completed it once this summer.
Okay.
The first time we went out there, and we were just following, I don't even know the guy's route that we were following, and we figured that we could probably, beat his time, and his time was, I think, 54 hours.
Okay.
And when we got to the seventh peak, we started at Mount Chavano. Okay. So at the seventh peak, I don't even know which one that one is. Anyways, seventh.
Columbia, Harvard.
Harvard,
yeah.
So when we were at top of Harvard, we knew at that point that if we dropped down, that it'd probably be another, I don't remember what it was, 12 hours till we'd get out.
Yeah, probably more. Yeah.
If not, and so we were at that point, and I could just tell that like he must have been feeling sick or something, because throughout all our other times when we were out there training, he was out hiking me, out running me. I mean, he was strong. And then, but that day, like it was super cold out there, and I just remember him sweating. And then when it was super hot out, he's over there all bundled up. So like he was just not feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And at Mount Harvard, I could tell like just his struggle to that point. And we were already behind our pace by, I don't know, I think 4 or 5 hours compared to where we thought we'd be. And, we looked at each other, and I could tell he wanted out, but he's never quit anything. And so we just had a conversation up there, kind of a heart-to-heart conversation. And we decided to bail, even though it was 3 hours till we were able to catch a ride. But yeah, so we bailed it then. Even though I felt like I could continue, but I definitely hadn't scouted it out enough. And just going on the course at night, following a little line on my phone, it was difficult.
Yeah.
And we got ourselves not necessarily in trouble, but man, some of those boulder fields that we were climbing up and going down, I was like, I wasn't ready to try it all by myself.
Sure.
Just because I wasn't prepared for it.
That's probably smart.
So, yeah, we bagged it that day and hiked on out. And my main reason for agreeing to go ahead and do all of this with him was because of the Moab 240. I figured, man, this is going to be the perfect training.
Okay.
So it was 2 weeks later when, at first I had to convince my wife that I was going to go ahead and do Nolan's by myself. And she wasn't up to it. She wasn't very excited about it. She told me if I got a spot tracker that she would let me attempt it. So I went and bought a spot tracker.
Fair enough.
And then went and I attempted it by myself again. And instead of having just a free app, I went ahead and paid for the upgrade so I could get a little topography on my map, and I could figure it out and be able to, follow it a little bit better. And even at that point, I figured that I could probably finish in 51 hours was my goal, even though 60 was the ultimate goal. Just at night, going at night on bushwhacking, trying to follow a line, it was so difficult. During the day, I was motoring, but at night, I don't know. Yeah. I just find myself not wanting to go off course, double checking my phone to make sure I was on course. And then so many false summits, especially at night. And then these little, I don't know, just some of those little fingers and those points that you're like, man, this is kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
And so I just took it super slow and careful at night. I was by myself and, and just kept trucking along. But I ended up finishing it on my second attempt, and it was right at 56 hours.
Nice.
And I took 3 pretty good breaks throughout it, right at an hour. So I guess, I could have cut that time off. There was some sections out there where I definitely lost probably 2 hours just in my navigation.
Sure.
So, overall, I think if I was to do it again, which I'm thinking I'm going to do it again this coming summer, just because I'm like, man, I could do better.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I could get under 50 hours if I do it again. Now that I have a better lay of the land, I might feel a little bit more confident at night. Um, and if I just follow that same course, I won't have to rely on my map so much. And so I feel like I could probably get I think I could do a sub 50 on that same route.
Yeah. Did you go self-supported?
No, I had my dad was helped me out on the first day.
Okay.
So there was 3 spots where he met me, and then my wife met me in 3 different spots.
Okay.
I guess on the second day.
Yep. Okay.
So, although I think self-supported on that particular route would not be too much more difficult, just because there's definitely a lot of water crossings, so you get a lot of fluid, and it's just, I mean, you had to take enough gear, to stay warm basically for at night. I'm sure if I chose a different time of the year, and I think it could almost definitely be faster even if it was just completely self-supported, because then I wouldn't be there resting and taking my time.
Yeah.
So
did you take any naps while you were out there?
I did take one 45-minute nap.
Okay.
I mean, well, it's probably 20 minutes, but I stayed there for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I planned on doing a nap earlier, but when I got down to where I had planned on napping, it was still daylight. So I was like, I'm going to continue to go. And so my wife met me at the next spot. And then that's where I went ahead and took a nap.
Okay.
And normally I probably wouldn't, but I mean, at that point I was like, I know I'm not going to get the fastest time out there by any means. And a nap sounded really good. So.
Do you remember whose track you were following?
No, I'd have to look it up. It was just some track that my brother, some guy that he was reading about. And so I just went and found his Strava.
Yep.
And just downloaded it.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel like going south to north, did you take a pretty traditional trail, or it sounds like you're not even super familiar with the ins and outs of the trail if you didn't do tons of scouting? Like, did you do anything different than other people do, or do you feel like you took a pretty standard route?
I think I probably took the standard route because there wasn't anything super sketchy.
Okay.
Where I know on the Traverse to Missouri, there's a sketchy route that would probably save you a ton of time.
Going up the ridge. Yep.
Going on the ridge. And I didn't attempt that. In fact, the way I went, I thought I was going to be able to traverse high and make up some time, but I think it cost me a good 30 minutes because then I kind of had to backtrack, and just trying to traverse was taking a long time.
Yep.
And the same with when I did what they'll call a traverse, but not really the traverse from Columbia to Harvard. I did that section one time with my brother, and so the way we went was different than what was on my map.
Okay.
And so then I decided, okay, I know which way is going to be faster, or I thought. And so at night I went, and then I just put my phone away, and I was just trekking up, and I was like, man, where is this trail? And I remember thinking that the trail should be any moment. And even looking at the ridge line, anyways, I pulled out my phone, and man, I was like pretty far off course, and I just have no idea how I got off course. I just thought I was taking the quickest way. And anyways, it's amazing, especially at night, how just the smallest little ridge, or at least I felt like it was, just completely took me in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And
so from Columbia to Harvard, were you up higher than you should have been?
Actually, I was much lower.
Oh, really?
I should have been.
So you dropped all the way down into that basin and were a little bit too low. Okay.
And then when I, started to turn left to climb back up, is where I just didn't go sharp enough left. And it was night. And I thought I could see the ridge line. And so I thought I was perfect, but it was just the wrong ridge line that I was aiming at. And it was such a minor little degree off, but it cost me quite a bit of time. And that was kind of a frustrating moment.
Yeah, you're just losing time out there. And
yeah,
it's frustrating. Like, I can only imagine. Yeah, I'm such a fan of Nolan's, and I like to geek out on all things Nolan's. And I saw when you finished, and I wished I would have gotten you to jump on the podcast at that point, so that I could have got you when it was a little bit fresher in your mind. What were the last few peaks like? I mean, Albert and Massive, they're just huge monoliths. And, by the time you start climbing Albert, you still got like 25 miles to go or so. So it's a huge section. Like, were you staying pretty positive, or where was your head at?
I think I was staying super positive at that point just because, I mean, it's just basically 2 more to go.
Uh-huh.
But climbing up Mount Albert, I did do that section in the daytime with my brother as one of the, because I've never climbed it from the backside. And but at night, it was so incredibly different. And what I mean by, because I was hitting that part at, night, early morning. I mean, there's always false summits on every peak, but man, Mount Albert especially, and it's just such a long ways. Once you think, you're above tree line, and you just keep traversing and traversing off of one ridge to the next ridge, and doing it at night was just, I don't know, it definitely played some mind games with me. And when I look at my phone and I was trying to figure out, man, how much further, even though I knew it was a long ways because I did do that section in the day, that one did kind of, like, I was super positive because I knew after that peak, it was just Mount Massive. But Mount Albert, it was difficult.
Yeah.
And it was the thing throughout that whole time. I did see some other people. I saw that other people were attempting at the same time I was. So I knew there was other people out there on course. And so I was expecting at some point that I would come across somebody else, or maybe somebody else would catch me. And it was such a clear night. I mean, the moon wasn't out. So that was another difficult thing. It was just so dark and it was hard to see the ridge lines. But when I would look back, I was like, oh man, there's a headlamp. And I don't know how many times I thought I saw somebody's headlamp and it was just a star at the top of a ridge line. That kept screwing me up because I'd stop and I'd look and I'd try to contemplate, is that somebody or is that not? So yeah, but Mount Albert, it was a tough one just because it was later on, and it's just, it is a long ways from the time you get to above tree line. And I mean, you feel like that you should be right there, but it's just a long trek.
Yeah. Yeah. How'd your brother feel about it? It sounded like he was pretty pumped on getting it done, but it didn't happen for him this year.
Yeah, it didn't happen for him this year. And I think when I was talking to him, I asked him if he wanted to do the second attempt with me, and he wasn't too pumped about it. And for him, he hasn't done a lot of 100s. He's done the Leadville 100, and his fastest time was 1840 something.
Whoa.
Like a smoking time.
Yeah.
But when I asked him if he wanted to do it again, he just wasn't too pumped about it. I think he still was kind of figuring out, what went wrong with him in that, in his first attempt. It was the first time that he said it was the longest that he's gone without sleep while he's been running. And so I think that's where it kind of played a big role with him as well. But in fact, just yesterday, or maybe not yesterday, 2 days ago, we were talking about it, and he's the one, he brought it up that he wants to attempt it again this coming summer, and he wants to go north to south.
Okay. I was going to ask you that. Are you going to go south to north or north to south this year?
Well, since I already did it one way, I think I'm going to go for it and try it the other way now.
Nice.
And this time I'm going to definitely do more research. Okay. I'm going to try to scout some of the sketchy sections out, just so I go into it more prepared, because during the daytime, it's pretty easy considering, but at night, oh my gosh, I just don't want to be in a situation again where we make a wrong turn or we start climbing the ridge too early and, and get into cliffs and we're like, oh dang, let's see where we're at. Because that happened on our first attempt, where we thought, oh, here it is, we're just going to climb right up this, and we kind of just cliffed out, and we're like, man, we had to turn around and traverse some gnarly stuff because we didn't know better.
Yeah, you can get yourself into some serious trouble out there if you really have to have it dialed. So, but it sounds like you didn't do tons and tons of scouting, but you still got it done, man. So that's pretty impressive, man. It's pretty. So, like, growing up in Leadville, were you out climbing 14ers like as a kid, or was your family into getting out into the mountains, or not really?
I climbed I know I climbed Mount Albert before kindergarten.
Okay.
I just remember that because I remember going up from the north side, and just remember all those false summits.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably throwing some, I don't remember, but I just remember being very upset, going, I quit. And my mom's like, no, it's just right there. And I don't know how many times she said that before. And, but anyways, I did make it up that time. I do remember it was before kindergarten, like the summer going into kindergarten. But after that, like we climbed Mount Albert every once in a while. I think I climbed Mount Massive once, but we weren't really into like climbing 14ers.
Okay.
We did have some horses at the time, so we did do a lot of backcountry backpacking, or I guess horse packing.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent a tremendous amount of time out there in the woods, and we do some hikes, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't part of us, but I mean, on horses we go ride. My dad was very into hunting, so I think the most hiking I ever did was out there searching for some elk. But that was pretty much the extent of, I guess, hiking.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of that. And I think it probably because there wasn't a lot of time because of wrestling all the time and, I don't know, getting wood. I remember doing that quite a bit as a kid. So,
had you stayed awake for a couple nights? Like, had you done a 200 miler before your Nolan's attempt this last year?
I did the the Tahoe 200.
What year?
And 2019.
Okay.
So
okay.
And that race was another one where I went into it with super high goals and everything else, believing that I'd be a top 10 finisher. And I mean, I'm like, man, distance is my strength. It's because I'm not super fast in a 5K or a half marathon, but the longer it gets, I just felt like, man, I could totally finish top 10. And I started off strong, and it just ate me alive. I think once again, going into it, not truly knowing the course and just kind of winging it per se is not the best way to go about it, because I think if I was to have studied the course a little bit more and at least scouted it out better on paper, then I'd maybe have, I don't know, approached it a little bit differently. Because it was just so much more climbing than I expected.
Really?
Even though I knew what the elevation game was at the time, but it was a doozy for sure. And I know I thought I saw donkeys out there. Some, I thought I saw a lot of hippos, turkeys. I mean, that was a rough one. And I mean, I got a little bit of sleep there as well. I think I took 2 20-minute naps in our minivan. And then I think 2 trail naps out there. I think it was like 10 minutes. But as far as lack of sleep, yeah, there was a lot of it in that race.
Okay. So you had your family out there crewing you, or who was
crewing?
Okay, your family.
My wife usually always goes to any of those things, and my kids usually tag along as well. So
cool. Yeah. And that was your first 200, right?
Yep.
Okay. What was your finishing time? Do you remember?
I honestly don't. I don't. I think I was like 22nd someplace, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, I was still pretty happy and excited about all of that, because there was I think it was at mile 50, my Achilles tendon was super inflamed, and it was pretty painful. And I remember wanting to quit at mile 50, and my wife was like, no, we didn't come out for the Tahoe 50. My kids are, you better not quit. And I think it was the look in my kids' eyes, both, my son and my daughter, and my wife saying that you didn't come out for the Tahoe 50. So I was like, okay, I'll go to the next one.
Yep.
And then I would say the pain didn't get any better, but I just learned to, live with it a little bit better. And so I just powered through, and all in all, it probably wasn't as bad as I was thinking it was.
Okay. So I'm looking at doing my first 200 this year. Do you have any advice for me? Like, I've done, probably double digit 100s, maybe 10 hundreds or something like that. Should I alter my training in any way, or is there anything I should do training wise, or any advice you have for me?
I would say the same training that you use for a 50 or 100 is going to be the same training you use for a 200.
Okay.
The biggest thing is, and I have a hard time doing this, whether it's a 50 or 200 or 100, or even a marathon for that matter. You just got to dial it back. And like, I tend to go out too hard no matter what I do,
Mm-hmm.
just because I feel good.
Yep.
And then I get all these hopes. Oh man, I'm going to be a top 10 finisher. I'm going to take third.
Yeah.
And then people just start passing me. I'm like, what is going on here? So I would just say, truly dial it back. And just like anything else, where just make sure you continue to stay up on your calories. And I think in a 200 race, it's significantly easier to stay on your calories just because you're not working so hard. So it's a lot easier to eat. It's a lot easier to drink. And then, but don't hang out in the aid stations. I think that's the biggest key that I came across for the Tahoe race was, I don't know how much time I lost it. I forgot, but I did kind of calculate it up. But you could lose so much time in those races because it's so easy to stay at an aid station. You know, take care of your feet and eat.
And then just keep
I think
moving.
is my biggest, and keep moving.
Yep.
You know, run when you can, hike if you must, you know, but no matter what, you're always moving forward.
Yeah, that's good advice. Are you planning on doing more 200s in the future?
Yeah, since the Tahoe 200, I was doing Nolan's to train for it. I thought that'd be good, but I do think that Nolan's was my Achilles heel for the Tahoe 200. And part of that is Nolan's just not with, I don't know, 85, 90% of the route being kind of bushwhacking and, you know, not on any trail. It just really tore up my feet. Like the bottom of my feet hurt, you know, incredibly bad. My left foot, I got plantar fasciitis from it, which still kind of bothers me now. And I just wasn't able to recover well enough to continue my training. Because once I finished that, wouldn't say I was laid up, but it really set me back. Because I would try to go out for a short run, I just did not feel very well. Just really, it really took a toll on my body, and so it set back my training for the Tahoe 200.
Yeah.
And then when the Tahoe 200 came, I was like, okay, I know I'm a little bit further behind the curve than I want it to be, but I still felt very confident in doing it. But there was a pretty long section, 20 some miles of no water, and it was just the heat of the day, and in the canyons, and I don't know, some people said it was, you know, 110 degrees there. I don't know how hot it was, but incredibly hot and incredibly dry. And I just ran out of water way too early. And so I think being dehydrated, and then my plantar fasciitis was just hurting incredibly bad. It was like at mile 40 where I was like, geez, I just wasn't sure if I'd be able to go any further. And I knew like 200 miles more to go. But I just try to drink, try to get rehydrated. And anyways, it's at mile 70 where I just talked to my wife, and I was like, I just mentally, the heat and the dehydration took a toll on me. Physically, I don't know if I'd have been able to finish just because I was injured going into it. So I think both of those things combined just kind of, I don't know, put me to a stop and made me realize that I wasn't invincible anymore.
Yeah.
I'm getting too old.
Sorry, man. You said this was Tahoe or this was Moab?
Oh, I'm sorry. The Moab.
The Moab.
I'm looking at a Tahoe poster right in front of me.
Okay.
Maybe that's why I said Tahoe.
No,
but yeah,
right.
The Moab one.
Okay.
I think it was just so hot and dry, and a 20-mile section of just no fluid out there. I just wasn't prepared for it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I ended up throwing in the towel at I think it was mile 70.
Okay. Yep.
And I was talking to my kids, and I asked them if I should sign up for it again, and they said yes. So I'm going to sign up for it again. I'm not going to let that race beat me.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's the best way to look at it. You got to come back and get that monkey off your back.
Yeah.
Are you going to continue to do Leadmans? I mean,
yeah, since I live here in Leadville.
Yeah, it's in your backyard.
It's my backyard, and I've just been doing it for so long. I I really want to get that, you know, big 100-mile buckle. So I got one more year till I get 10 year, the 10-year buckle.
Nice.
And at that point I was thinking maybe I'll throw in the towel and do something different, but I think I'll just continue to do it.
Yeah.
until I can't do it.
Wow.
I mean, I'm still competitive in it, so why
Yeah,
not?
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think things have changed from like your first Leadman where you barely just like you crossed the finish line in under 30 hours, but it sounds like it was really, really rough, to becoming, you know, a contender? Like, how did things change? Did your training change in there, or was it a mental switch, or what changed for you in there? Because it sounds like you knocked a lot of time off your Leadville 100.
Yeah, for my first year being, it was 30 or 29 hours and 40 minutes. And then the very next year I did it in 23 hours.
Whoa.
Maybe it was, yeah, 23 hours something. So a lot of it, I have to say, it was definitely a mindset change, because going into it, it's just going into the unknown, being scared, not
Mm-hmm.
knowing what to expect,
Mm-hmm.
and having the goal of just finishing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think you're just going to finish. But going into it, a little more educated, and going into it with some bigger goals of getting that big buckle, um, you know, that's, I think, the big part of it. So a different mindset going into it. I wasn't scared of it. Um, I knew I trained significantly better, kind of had more structure to it instead of just going out and running. Um, I don't know. I just believed in myself. And so when I was out there, it was just easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just mentally and physically better prepared all around.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you train differently?
Significantly differently.
Okay. How so?
And I think the biggest part was I went from I'll just go for a run here and there to creating a structured plan that I was just going to follow.
Okay.
And so it went from not really knowing to making a point of knowing and doing it correctly.
Mm. So what does your structured training plan look like? Do you have speed work, tempo days mixed in with slow mountain climbing days, or how does it look for you?
It's definitely a combination of everything. And I kind of do it differently as far as like now in the winter time, or I guess it's becoming winter up here. I don't do a lot of running, mainly because it's cold outside.
Mm-hmm.
But the other big part is I just change it. I do like right now I'm doing a lot of high intensity short mountain biking. A lot of it's on a trainer, but also a lot of it's snow biking.
Okay.
So I kind of just train for some snow bike races, and also prepare myself for some early mountain bike races that we have here. Um, but come January is when I start running again, and it's just I ease myself into it. Um, and in the spring, early spring, I start doing a lot of speed work and really get that strength, and then so a lot of high tempo work in, and then just the closer I get to the race, or more later into the summer, then I really increase some of that endurance running. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stagger it and stack it on top of each other.
Okay. Are you increasing mileage by quite a bit too? Are you running big mileage during the week?
The closer in the summertime I do.
Yeah.
I would say on the weekdays, um, it's an hour and a half, 2 hours most if I'm doing an endurance run.
Mm-hmm.
But on the weekends, it's usually just 3 hours, sometimes 2, 3 hour back to back.
Okay.
But since I'm doing also a lot of mountain biking, that's where I have a significantly more amount of time, I would say, because it doesn't beat up my body as much.
Yeah.
So I definitely spend more time on the bike than I do running.
Mm. Okay.
I mean, maybe not significant, but it's more time on the bike for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it takes a lot longer to get those bike rides in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned that you did the Run Rabbit Run, and we talked about Tahoe. Any other big races that you've done in the past? I took a brief look at your ultra sign up, and it looks, I mean, you've got a lot of races on there, but it looks like a whole mess of them are in Leadville.
Yeah. I would say, um, as far as 100s go, there's the Tahoe race. I mean, not the Tahoe, sorry, Run Rabbit Run. I've done some 50s. I did I don't remember, one of the vacation races, 50s. So not a lot of running races outside of Leadville, to be honest.
Okay.
Some in Utah,
Yeah.
but I do a lot more mountain biking, I would say, across the board than anything else.
Yeah. Do you have any like dream races that are on your bucket list that you would like to do one day? Or do you like just staying local and doing the backyard races?
No, I definitely want to do Western States. I've been putting in
Mm,
for it. This last year was my sixth, maybe seventh year
okay.
putting in.
Hmm.
And every year I just cannot believe that I haven't gotten in, because my little bracket of tickets compared to everybody else, I don't know. But anyways, I've put in for, I think, 6 or 7 years for Western States. So that's definitely a race I want to do. And when I first started putting in for it, it was when I felt like I was in my prime. When here I am doing, getting a top 10 in Leadville, I'm like, oh, I could totally do well in that race. And just because I feel like it's more suited towards me as
Okay.
far as just that, starting up high and having kind of a negative elevation gain. I feel like one of my strengths is running downhill,
Mm,
um, even though it's not necessarily downhill, but
yeah.
I just felt like that race would suit me pretty well.
Hmm.
Um, and then my family really wants me to do the Hurt 100 in Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to start putting in for that race as soon as that opens up again.
Cool.
But no, I'm definitely more interested in opening up the horizon and seeing what else is out there.
Hmm.
I've just done these local races just because they're here.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest reasons, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. So what are you looking at for next year? Nolan's north to south, Moab 240, another
Yep.
Leadman.
Another Leadman.
Dang.
I have to defend that title because I won it this last year. So
Oh,
got to
dang.
defend that title. And then the other thing that I picked up here in the last 2 years is burro racing. So pack burro racing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we have some donkeys, and they're in our backyard.
Okay.
And that's just, I think, another avenue of getting out there and running
Yeah.
that I happen to, man, it's a lot of fun.
Tell me about those races. Like I've seen pictures. I kind of vaguely know what it's all about, but I don't really know the details.
So basically the rules is you can't ride your donkey. And I think that's pretty much the biggest rule, but there are races in anywhere from 10 to 30 miles,
Okay.
depending on which one it is. And basically you have a donkey, it has a pack saddle on it. You're kind of recreating back in the day when a miner would strike gold up in the mountains, and they would have to pack their burro with all their mining equipment and run back into town to basically patent their mining claim. And so the races that are up here, there's a race in Fairplay, which is the World Championship race. There's a race in Buena Vista, in Leadville, and then just other parts throughout Colorado. But it's in burro racing, you could have the strongest runner out there, but if your donkey chooses not to run, then you're just not going to run.
Mm.
But if you get a donkey that really likes to run and you have a strong runner, then you could just, I don't know, win.
Yeah.
And I would say for myself, I have a miniature donkey, and her and I last year, we went out, and I think we kind of shocked the burro racing world. We won the whole Triple Crown races, so I was the Triple Crown winner.
Whoa.
Which was the first time that any miniature donkey has ever done that.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and I was a complete newcomer. It was kind of a shock to myself, and I just ended up having a donkey that liked to run, and I don't know, we kind of dominated last year.
Wow.
And then again, go ahead.
Do you train these donkeys to run or?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Okay.
Because the first time when I ran with Buttercup is her name, it was the first time racing with her, and we took third at our first race, and I could just tell that on this downhill descent, a lot of the other people were just outrunning us, and she was the limiting factor. And I was like, man, I just need to work on getting her in shape. So we ran a lot that summer, and anyway, she was in great shape, and we didn't lose a race since.
Wow. That's
and
crazy.
So, yeah, just like a human, you get that burro in shape, and if they like to run and you got a good connection,
yeah,
it's going to win a lot of races. So
wow. So you got a full year next year.
Yep, another full year. My brother and I, we signed up for 24 hours of Old Pueblo.
Oh,
which is, you know, a 24-hour race in Arizona.
uh-huh.
Also signed up for, I think it's 6 hours of Papago. So
Okay.
that's another 6 hour mountain bike race here early in the summer. And then we always also do together as a team 12 hours of Mesa Verde for
Oh,
that team effort on a mountain bike. And uh, we've taken second, I think like 3 years, and we have not hit that top spot yet. And I think this year is going to be our year to do that.
wow.
So
Wow. I mean, what do your winters look like? It sounds like you're really competitive. So I'm guessing that, you know, if you're that competitive of a person, you're not really letting your foot off the gas too much over the winter time, or are you resting a little bit? Like, what does it look
I'd
like?
say it's different. And the reason why I would say it's different is because there are some snow bike races here.
Mm-hmm.
So the fat tire bike races. Um, and so there's about a month, and you know, last year it was after Tahoe when I took about a month off, just took it easy. This year, it was after Moab where I kind of just took it easy for a while. But come November, beginning of November, I just start hitting it hard again. And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, I focus a lot on the bike than anything else. I teach a spin class up here twice a week.
Mm,
So I do the spin class, which is a hell of a good workout.
yeah.
They also have a hockey league up here. So I play hockey, which is also a heck of a good workout. Um, and then just ride the fat bike. And
Mm,
so I really prepare, I guess, for my summer does start like in November.
okay.
And I hit the gas hard. Um, and once again, it's my brother and I who are out there competing for that top spot in those snow bike races.
Mm,
So that's my main goal right now is just to do well in those races and I guess better him or tie him, or I just want one of us to win.
yeah.
I don't care really which one, but last year
Wow.
I beat him more on the snow bike.
Okay.
So this year it might be him.
Wow. You said he's a year older than you?
Yeah, a year older.
Okay. You guys are just out there killing it, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, I'm curious, man. You've been doing this stuff for 13 years. Like what's your why? Like, what's your reason for continuing to show up to these races and just doing it over and over for over 13 years?
I don't know. I guess that's such a hard question because I know when people ask me, why do you sign up for 100 or why do you want to do the 200? And I think if somebody has to ask the question of why,
Mm-hmm.
then no matter what I say, I don't think it would even make sense to them.
Yeah, I get that.
But as far as I think the biggest thing is because I do like the challenge,
Mm-hmm.
incredible. You know, I like pushing myself to that point just to see how I can do.
Mm-hmm.
I like pushing myself to, yeah, just to see how I can do. And it's that challenge. And that's one of the reasons, like I said, why I signed up for the Tahoe 200 because I wanted that bigger challenge. I signed up for the Moab 240 because I wanted that bigger challenge. Because if I just do like the Leadville 100, I truly feel like I'm going to finish, but at what's going to be my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to challenge myself and check out and see some other horizons. And I think the biggest thing is because I still can.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some big knee surgeries, and there's been points where I felt like, oh man, I won't be able to do this anymore. But since I still can, is why I still do.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I get
Man,
that. I totally get
yeah.
it. Are your kids a big influence too? Like, do you feel like they're watching you and you're trying to, influence them in one way or another?
I definitely feel like they're watching me, and it's one of the reasons why when I set out to accomplish something, I refuse to quit because I think that's a mentality that I try to teach them and putting in that effort. And if you really work towards something, you can accomplish anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely feel like they're watching always on that. And even when I'm here at the house, just on my trainer, just pushing myself, I know that they can hear me. So they
Mm-hmm.
know that I'm pushing hard because I'm really striving to be my best at that particular thing. And so it's definitely something that I want for them to take away.
Mm-hmm.
It's something hard that's really to tell them how to do it. But I feel like showing them at least how I do it and pushing myself to those limits, they'll get something out of it someday. It
Totally.
might not be today. It might not be, you know, when they're in high school, but I know someday they'll go, man, I remember my dad used to work so hard to accomplish some of those things. And if he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of my big pushes as well for doing what I do.
Yeah.
Because they're always watching.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. That's really cool, man. Yeah, I remember watching my dad. He was a cyclist, and I remember like handing off water bottles to him in races and watching him ride his trainer. And yeah, as a kid, I didn't really think too much of it. But then when I grew up and sort of started dabbling in this stuff, I thought, man, yeah, he was a badass, and I just look back at that, and yeah, it was a big influence and a big kind of a game changer for me, just watching him do his thing. So yeah, they'll see it someday.
Yeah, and like even for the Moab race, when I decided to quit, I do have to say, my daughter wasn't there. She was at the race, but she was in the camper. I do have to say, if she was there at that aid station, and she would have asked me or told me not to quit, I probably wouldn't have. Even though I was at that point, that mental break where I was like, I really don't think I could do it because I have 160 miles to go. But hearing that come from her, just like in the Tahoe race, she told me that, don't quit. I probably would have at least tried to go to the next aid station, I have to say. So I thank her for not being there, but I wish she was.
Right.
Because maybe I could have say, I was a Moab 240 finisher, but she wasn't there to push me. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there'll be next year and there'll be other years.
There'll be other years.
God, you can't finish them all. I mean, I think that's your only DNF, right?
It is my only DNF. And I think that's where
that's impressive.
When I was out there, I was like, man. And that was like one of the hardest things too, because I know I've been in worse pain and I know I've dug deeper to finish other races. But some of those other races were 20, or 50 miles away, not 170 more to go. So I was like, yeah. It was a kick in the teeth for me for sure.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. So this summer, definitely as far as the big races, for sure, Leadman again. Going to go for the Moab 240. Those are going to be, I guess, my big ones. And I'm going to attempt Nolan's from north to south. I'm going to finish Nolan's from north to south.
Nice. And
I'm going to finish the Moab race.
Hell yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Is mindset something that you work on? Is that something you train? I mean, it sounds like you're already visualizing finish lines next year. And I feel like that's huge. I mean, just sitting down and being able to visualize that, 9 months, a year ahead of time, I feel like that's such an advantage. Is that something you work on? Or is that something that comes to you naturally from your wrestling days?
I wouldn't say that I put focus on it or necessarily work on it, but I do know when I'm out there training and it's getting difficult, whether I'm on the trainer, which is incredibly boring sometimes, but if I'm doing an interval, I picture myself, climbing a steep section of some course. So that helps me push me along that way. But it's definitely at the starting line of any race. I do not picture myself not finishing. Throughout the race, I'm out there contemplating whether I should finish or not, and I have to fight those demons, no matter what race it is. But when I wake up in the morning, I picture myself finishing.
Yeah.
So,
what can
I wouldn't say it's,
yeah.
So what is Marvin going to do today?
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, I think, and my wife thinks I'm kind of a freak sometimes, but I guess what I told her for Thanksgiving dinner, she goes, "What are you thankful for?" I told her, I guess I'm thankful that my ancestors were more hunters and gatherers than farmers. All about genetics.
You totally. Yeah, totally.
I mean, you have to work incredibly hard for it, but
Yeah. I mean, I want to wrap this up eventually, but I'm still just thinking about Nolan's, man. So when you started Nolan's from Blank's Cabin, did you know you were going to finish that day, that second attempt?
Yeah, there was no doubt in my mind.
No doubt. Damn.
I mean,
how do you have no doubt? That's crazy.
I just it seemed completely doable for me because when I look at the Leadville 100, so that's 100 miles, 30 hours, I could do it in, 20.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is mainly hiking. I just felt like there was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to finish. I thought I was going to finish a lot sooner. I didn't realize how treacherous and how difficult it was, but I have to say that when I started, I don't know, there was just no doubt.
Wow.
I did not at any point in time during that attempt did I even contemplate not finishing. I don't know. I think it was because I was focused, and it had a lot to do probably the fact that the first time we didn't finish, and I wouldn't say it wasn't on my terms, but I was like, dang, I really wanted to finish that first attempt, but I realized, he probably wasn't going to be able to, like, he wasn't in the right mindset. And so when it was on my terms, there was no doubt.
Wow. Did you have good weather the whole time?
Yeah, the weather was, and that was amazing.
Okay.
It wasn't really cold on any of the peaks. I didn't get any moisture at all. It was the day after I finished those when we got our first big snowstorm up here. And it was the strangest thing because I finished the race, or I finished Nolan's attempt. And then it was the next day, the smoke rolled in here so super thick from all the fires. And I was like, man, if I was up there, my asthma would have kicked in. And who knows, they would have probably been a limiting factor. And then 2 days after I finished, like, we got, I think, 6 inches of snow here in Leadville, up in the mountains. I don't know how much they got on top of the peaks, but quite a bit. So there was that small window where it just worked out perfectly.
You nailed it. Did you have that date pre-planned ahead of time, or were you waiting for good weather and it's like, okay, today's the day?
I didn't have that particular date. It was, I looked at the weather and I was like, man, there's 4 days this weekend that looks good. And then it shows snow. Okay. So this is my last attempt.
Okay.
And so I just went for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's impressive, man. What are you going to do differently this year if you go north to south?
Definitely going to scout it out quite a bit more. I'm sure that some of the routes going from north to south, I would think would change.
Yeah, a little bit different.
And I only say they'd be different because some of those sections would just be so much more difficult going the other direction. So I'm definitely going to put more time into it, studying it, and a little bit more time into it being like out there on course for sections that I just want to make sure I see, especially the sections that I'm going to end up being there during the nighttime. Because that's one thing I really gained from the first and second time when I went through is at nighttime, I'm just so much slower. And it's more because I don't feel super confident in the direction I'm going. Even though it's definitely, tricky footing, like every single step. But I just want to be confident in the route that I'm going, that I'm not going to be going off course and losing time.
Yeah.
And so definitely going to spend more time out there.
Will you go out to those sections that you're going to be at night and scout those at nighttime beforehand?
No, I'll just do them during the day.
Okay.
Just so, yeah. And I don't think I'll go scout at night at any point in time, although that does seem like a great idea. But I think learning the terrain during the day and trying to figure out every, I don't know, landmark that there could be, just so when I'm climbing up or trying to figure out, which skyline I'm going to be going for, I think would be pretty beneficial instead of seeing the first time at night, because it was difficult.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
Navigating at night, bushwhacking with no moon. I was like, God dang, it is dark.
Yeah. You're just constantly going like, am I going the right way?
Yeah. And
just can't see very far ahead of you. Yeah, dude. I mean, it's just like, and I always talk about this with my buddy, John Denise, who finished Nolan's this year. It was over the allotted 60-hour time, but we always talk about, you're looking up and there's a big pile of rocks to your left, a big pile of rocks to your right. It's like, okay, so I need to go over one of these. Which one do I go over? Like, you could go over one and get cliffed out. You're just unsure, especially at night. There's just so much that you just don't know.
And I know, and going up I don't know. I don't even know where it was, but it was night.
Yeah.
Just trying to follow that GPS. And I'm like, at one point, I'm just going up and I'm like, I'm totally on course. I'm going. I'm like, okay, now I'm a little bit to the left. So I kind of go to the right. Oh, now I'm more to the right. And even just when you're next to those cliffs and on such a steep grade, like the GPS just doesn't, like, it's not exact. And so I
Mhm.
remember going up one section, it was so incredibly steep. I mean, the rocks weren't loose, but it was just so incredibly steep going up at night. I'm going, man, if I fall or slip, I'm going to or tumble, I'm
Mhm.
going to go down a long ways. It wasn't a cliff, but it was just so incredibly steep, and using my trekking poles with all my might to try to just push and pull and make sure I didn't slip. And I was like, I couldn't believe how steep the course was and where I was at and what I was doing at night. And I know if my wife would know where I was and what I was doing, she'd freak out.
Totally.
I was like, it did not seem safe.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's some sections out there that were definitely rough, and
Definitely sketchy. I know. And
yeah,
there's so many points on the route. You're like, is this the right way? Like,
yeah,
there's no way this is part of the course. Like, there's
I
no
know,
way. Like, this is ridiculous.
I know. And then when you think about it, like literally it's the fastest way,
Yeah,
that isn't, then it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I just cannot get over how steep some of those sections were.
no doubt.
That, and even just trying to stay on course with my phone, trying to look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm going up this. I see cliffs on both sides. I hope this works out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So slippery.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, and like if I would have seen those during the day, maybe I'd have been able to just power through and not worry about, is this the right way?
Right.
And because I know I lost so much time at night just guessing myself and like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
And getting to the top and you're like, whew, here, okay, had a quick
Oh,
snack,
yeah.
took a
Thank
little
God.
picture,
Yeah.
made it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody that you look up to in the endurance world? Like you said that when you were wrestling, you weren't really into, following the big wrestlers or anything like that. Do you have people that you look to for inspiration, or are you just kind of like almost like looking inside for like you're your own hero type of thing?
No, I would say, um, I look up to Dave Mackey. I think his
Uh,
story
yeah,
and what he's done is incredible, especially for his setbacks that he's had.
no kidding.
And what I really like about him was the, so in 2014, it was the year before, anyways, he competed in the Leadman
Okay.
and he took second and I took third that year.
Uh,
And it was just like, I was competing with him directly, like, and so I don't know, I got to know him pretty well.
cool.
Not on a, complete friend on friend basis, but just know who he was. And then hearing of his tragic accident and what he's overcome, and then he comes back and he competes in the Leadman again, I think is tremendous. And I think just having that drive is, and not quitting, because just like anybody else, you get some sort of setback and you could just throw in the towel and just say, poor me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but he goes out there and he shows himself and proves to himself what he can do. And I don't think he did it for anybody else but himself. And I just think that alone is pretty inspirational. And so I look at those kind of stories and people that overcome, some of, the biggest obstacles in what they've done. Even David Clark, he was another one
Mm-hmm.
that, overcame some huge obstacles,
Totally.
in his earlier years in his life, and what he made of himself before, how his life tragically ended as well.
Mm-hmm.
But, I look at those people and those are the ones that, I think look up to and inspire me to try to see what I can do, and how I can compete with myself as well. Because when you look at, some of the elite runners, although they're amazing and I'll never be to that standard, um, I don't think they're anything to look up to, even though they work really hard, but they're just a different breed.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to follow them and see how well they do and, against other people, but I wouldn't call them my heroes.
Sure.
Like, yeah, so I look more at the stories and what people have overcome and how they've turned their life around. That's more inspirational to me than the people who win Western States or any of those other big races.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way of looking at it, because you're right. Even those elite runners, they're just another human being. But when you're looking at those people who have overcome such huge obstacles, I mean, that's real inspiration right there. So
Yeah.
that's well put, man.
Yeah. Like I look at, I guess, the weekend warriors. I consider myself a weekend warrior. And the average Joes that go out there, and you can see just the big gaps and improvements they made. Now that's what I like to see. So
yeah, people with full-time jobs and 3, 4 kids, and, you know, getting up running at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning because that's the only time they have to do it. Like,
yes,
that's the inspiring stuff right there.
yep. Because we've all been there. Well, maybe not all of us, but
Yeah.
we've been there and having to work around different schedules to make it work, and kids and the things that they come with. And I don't know, it's pretty amazing. And like I'm an endurance coach, and some of my athletes that have kids, and when they put on, what are your goals, and it's to balance family and business and my new, passion of running. Like I like seeing and trying to help them and see, what they could do, what excites me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you get to a certain point and you're just ready to pass some knowledge on and inspire other people. And, because, it's been said before, but a lot of this endurance stuff is sort of a selfish endeavor. You're taking so much time away from your family and you're spending so much time on this. And eventually you get to a point where you want to be able to give back a little bit too. So, yeah, it makes sense, man. All good stuff. Marvin, you're a badass, dude. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate it. And we'll be keeping an eye on you next year and cheering for you. And hopefully we can talk again after you do some more badass shit next year.
Sounds good. I'll definitely try to hook up with you sooner than later, so it's more fresh in my mind.
Absolutely. Stay in touch, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Marvin. Appreciate you, man. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
All right. You bet.